I've wanted to record this video for so effing long that I think I'm just gonna do it. I came out as gay while doing stand-up. It's a pretty unique coming out story. And so, like, what happened?
How do you figure out you're queer for the first time in your 30s? You go on one girl's trip to Nashville.
You go on one girl's trip to Nashville.
You go on one girl's trip to Nashville.
During Bonnaroo weekend, when every woman is there with her best friend from 6th grade, wearing only Daisy Dukes and crocheted tops. And I just started crying. And I'm there with my best friend. And she's like, "You okay?" And I said, "I just love fashion."
I love doing that joke because it's true. Like, that really happened. A year and a half ago, I was really depressed and I could not figure out why, and it just kept getting worse. And I was married, I had a beautiful family and child, and I just felt so confused and so scared. I felt really, really scared that I was never going to stop feeling this way. I think I need to be seen as this version of myself. I knew I needed something. I had no idea what that something was, but there was like this voice like deep inside me that was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I didn't really know what that voice was or where it came from, but I knew that this part of me was where all my creative talent, all my creative passion came from. And it was like she'd tried for so long to do it my way, and she was like, I can't do it anymore. You have to give me something or I won't be able to keep going. And so I asked her what she needed, and she said she needed stand-up. I remember telling like everyone that I was gonna do stand-up on Wednesday at this open mic. And then the night before, I just was a wreck, and I was so mad at myself, and I was just like, I'm gonna die. Like, I can't do this. The stakes were so high because I didn't want to fail. I wanted to do so well that I would have to keep doing stand-up.
I actually wanted to do stand-up for a really long time, but never could because the part of me that's in charge of those executive decisions of like, do we do it, do we not, was like, so at therapy last week, your therapist said you might have a rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I don't think anyone would let you do stand-up, so it's a no. But therapy does work, so here I am. Thank you. I was hoping I'd get a cheer. We're Asheville people. We're working on ourselves.
And I did. Like, I fucking did.
But speaking of therapy, I've been doing a lot of emotional healing over the last couple of years. The funny thing about emotional healing is you don't get to know what the healed version of you is going to be before you heal. And sometimes you discover that the healed version of you is still a secular person, but one who likes to talk about Jesus more than all your other friends.
For some context, I had wanted to do stand-up for 10 years, but had never really told anyone. I mean, I remember when I was like 24 4 and stayed up until 3 a.m. just writing all these stand-up ideas. It was just this rare connection I had to my most confident self that in that moment was like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm really gonna do stand-up, and I'm really gonna like say whatever I want to, and I'm gonna own who I am and my stories. But then the next morning I'd wake up and I just knew I wouldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. So I didn't for 10 years. I did a lot of other things, worked cool jobs, got an MFA in screenwriting, met my husband, and fell in love with this life that we started creating together. Then we had a baby. I also wrote erotica, and that was a good outlet for a while. But then I could never share the erotica, and I didn't know why. And then during the height of the pandemic and the quarantine, I taught screenwriting online to start my own business, and that went well for a while. But then I couldn't ever share my teachings on a bigger scale. I just couldn't do it, even though I really wanted to. And it was just the same thing as the erotica book, where I just could never send it out because it was never good enough. And this chronic like stopping myself on creative projects after having invested so much time and energy, I think that's what really started to wear on this part of me that ended up being like, you have to do stand-up. If you want to show me love, you have to do stand-up. But like, how did me doing stand-up lead to me coming out as gay? People only laugh, like really laugh, when you tell the truth. Like when they can see and feel and hear, because you are telling the truth about you. In hindsight, it was kind of brilliant that this part of me that was so depressed demanded I do stand-up, because I know I have OCD. I have a lot of letters at this point, honestly. ADHD, OCD, HSP, that's highly sensitive person. And I think in the OCD world, it's called exposure response therapy. So basically, I had these obsessive protectors that would not let me share my art publicly with people, like making this screenwriting class or writing the erotica book, but then not sharing it. You know, with stand-up, that's not an option. If you do stand up at all, there is zero option for you to not share what you're doing with other people, because that is in fact the whole art, is that you are sharing this incredibly vulnerable part of you to people live. And once I really started doing it every week, it was like I started feeling it, that I was becoming a different person than I'd ever known myself to be. And really what was happening was I was unbecoming everything I actually was not. I'm not a timid person. I'm not scared to be honest.
Apparently, I look like someone who drops $200 on weed in one go.
I love when I get to be honest.
But speaking of depression, I've recently gotten very into Buddhism, mostly because I am now fully on board with the idea that life is suffering. Did you know that vulva eczema is a thing? It is. We're going to end on an upper, okay?
I was doing stand-up about vulva eczema because that's what I was experiencing. And for me, the whole cathartic thing about stand-up was just being honest with what I was really feeling like in the moment, that day, that week. And I was going through this like chronic illness of my body shutting down. And in hindsight, like that was me struggling to be in harmony with my body because I wasn't listening to it. I didn't know how to listen to what my body was telling me, but what my body was telling me was like, something's really wrong. Like, you're not straight. And living as a straight person became emotionally painful, and then it became physically painful. So I talked about that.
I now have something called a vulvar specialist in my phone from the planet Vulvar.
Stand-up was amazing. I started to connect to an identity that was not defined by a role. Like, I had an identity that was not at all related to me being a mom or a wife or a daughter. When I got on that stage and took the mic in my hand, I let all of that melt away. And I just became Linda Barcy. and it felt so good.
Oh yes, I have no idea how this is gonna go because I started a new antidepressant today. Anyway, I was so tired while I was like writing stand up, and I was like, God, it feels like I've been drugged. And I was like, oh yeah, I did that.
I became a part of this community where we all shared this ache to be seen and to be known. And that helped this part of me that had been so depressed and so hopeless. It started to make that part of me feel hope. That maybe one day, you know, I wouldn't only feel this way on stage. And that's when things really started to change. I started reading a book about polyamory. When I say that, sometimes people are like, oh, is it like polysecure or like the ethical slut? And I was like, no, it was called Pucking Around, a Why Choose Hockey Romance. On Kindle Romance, in that world, Why Choose is code for many partners. So I read this book, and I mean, I still love this book. But yeah, this woman falls in love with the 3 most hot and cool dudes on this hockey team. Anyway, I read that book, and it woke up something inside of me that I was like, oh dear, this is really intense. I haven't felt this way about a relationship style like ever. So my first step into queerness was realizing that I had a really strong affinity for the polyamorous world of multiple partners. I really identified with having the capacity to fall in love with multiple people and to love those multiple people. It was very fascinating because I realized I'd always felt ashamed of kind of having like too much of a good thing, of like too much love for people, plural, and way too much need for connection. And then I went to Nashville.
So I've been having an interesting month because I realize I'm not as straight as I thought I was. And another way of saying that is I'm not straight. You go on one girl's trip to Nashville during Bonnaroo.
I went with my best friend, and it was enough physical space and distance from, you know, my life, my everyday life, that something broke through. And what broke through was my attraction to women.
And then by the end of the night, you know, I'm just like having a whole experience. It becomes undeniable, and I need to tell someone. So I turn to my best friend and I go, Emma, I think I'm bi. And the best part about coming out to your best friend of over 10 years is watching them try so hard to appear surprised. Like Emma was like, oh my God! She's finally figured it out! Holy shit! It was great, it was great. It was a great weekend. I did have a husband at the time. I was like, okay, gonna come out to him next.
And I was just emotional and terrified because I could feel that something was really shifting, and that would have implications on my marriage, and that I was gonna need to be honest and brave soon to keep healing. So I did. So I came out to my co-parent, at the time, my husband. And I do want to like give credit to my co-parent because they were so supportive through this.
The worst part about all this is my husband is so supportive. He's like, honey, if you want to go like kiss a girl, you should go kiss a girl. And I'm like, what, you loving me right now? You're just gonna love me through this? If you love me, who am I supposed to hate, myself?
A year ago, you know, that summer, like we really tried to find a new structure for our family that would allow us to still be partners, you know, cohabitate, but I just still needed more. It just started to become really clear that this, you know, home that I created with this family and in this specific structure, it just became really clear that, like, you know, I was going to keep hurting within this structure unless something changed. My co-parent and I ended up separating with a 3-year-old who we both loved and adored more than anything. And I started just reliving through all the pain that I went through when I was 4 and my parents got a divorce. And all the while I was trying to set up a foundation for a new life, a life as a solo person. I was applying for jobs, feeling so rejected every time I didn't get a job, and just feeling so scared. I mean, I was just so scared for months. Yeah, so much therapy, so much journaling, so much practicing showing up for myself. But yeah, stand up every week. My stand-up friends were my first queer friends, and them, you know, supporting what I was saying and doing, loving my jokes just like meant, I mean, the world to me. Making strangers laugh, making them smile and react, it kept me going. And I noticed that, like, when I was out of town, I noticed on the weeks where I was not able to do stand-up, my mental health really declined. Nosedove? I mean, man, and I was in therapy this whole time. This whole time I was in therapy. But it was like, I mean, even just sessions with my therapist couldn't keep up with how much I was feeling and how lost I felt and how much I needed to be seen and validated for just getting through each day. But every time I got on stage, did stand up, it was like fast forwarding and time traveling to that version of me that wasn't gonna feel that way every day. I mean, I say to people sometimes, like, stand up saved my life, but I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. It became a lifeline for who I really was, for who major parts of me were beginning to fear I was never going to be allowed to be before I died. I got a job, one that I was totally like surprised by, but then I fell in love with having a work family and leaving the house and being seen by so many people at my job. And it was right around the time that I got that job, that full-time job, that I basically started coming out again. It was like, I was terrified of women, and men were still comforting because hilariously, like, being polyamorous and having multiple male partners was somehow like less taboo than wanting women, because like I didn't grow up hearing like polyamorous are going to hell. I grew up hearing gay people are going to hell, not realizing that the real hell is being closeted. So no matter how much love you're getting, it doesn't get in, it doesn't sink in, because you're not allowed to be who you really are. And it was like I knew I wasn't in love with any of these, you know, dudes that I was seeing casually. And then at the beginning of March, I realized I was gay. I think the moment I really realized and accepted I was gay happened while I was driving to Trader Joe's, and I needed groceries, and I was listening to this song called Make Your Own Kind of Music, and it just like hit me. And I had kind of started to get this idea about like a fantasy book, because I love fantasy, and something I realized during this whole last year is that like I ache to write fantasy. I love fantasy. So I came up with this story, this fantasy story. In that moment when I was driving to Trader Joe's and listening to the song, I saw this scene in the fantasy lesbian romance book. I knew it was a lesbian romance. I knew it was a woman loving woman romance. I didn't call it in my head a lesbian romance at the time because I didn't know I was a lesbian. And I started envisioning the scene. And the funny thing is, like, it wasn't even like a romance scene, but it was this really empowering moment for the main character. There's two main characters, two women, but this one in particular who's more masculine. There's no other way to say it. She was who I really could feel that I identified with her. And that was shocking because I'd always been so feminine, and I'd always been so attached to my femininity and my long hair. I was really attached to my long hair. It was a security blanket, absolutely. But I must have driven around Trader Joe's like maybe a dozen times just listening to that song over and over and just crying, just bawling my eyes out, and letting this scene, this like rush of creativity and inspiration, and seeing the scene so clearly and feeling goosebumps on my arms, and just knowing that this was who I was, and that this scene that I created in my head, that I still very much ached to write into a book. It just was so powerful and so overwhelming, but in this way that was like such a relief. It was like, oh my God, you know, because this like more masculine female character who I still saw is so beautiful and, you know, lovable. For me to just be imagining a story about her and witnessing this really like pivotal moment in her life where she suddenly just like sheds the person she's always had to be because she was supposed to be that version of herself, and just being like, that's not who I am, this is who I am. It's a scene of her falling in love with who she really is, and like doing this grand romantic gesture of like, you know, she's a female knight, but like taking the helmet off. Sometimes when I'm just like down or kind of bored, I just like hear this line of dialogue that I imagine this character saying in this scene to a crowd of people, because they've seen her as this, you know, helmet covered person that they assumed was a man, and she's taking it off, and then she says her real name. She says, I am, and I have always been. And I just love it, and it's everything I am, I feel like, in that scene. It's everything I want to be, and that makes it everything that I am. And I love my coming out story because it's different. I mean, I've told it to enough people where that they're like, who realizes they're a lesbian without having fallen in love with another woman? But what they don't know is that I did fall in love with another woman. I fell in love with this character who is me, and I fell in love with her falling in love with another woman, and I just knew. And so in March, like, I really started grieving and making space for this version of me, this even more authentic version of me that was even more of a rejection of who I thought I was, who I have always presented as. And I cut my hair one night, and it felt really good. And sometimes when I just need to like let go, I play back that sound of scissors cutting my own hair. Like when I feel like people wanting something from me that I just can't give, I like hear that sound, and I just imagine the strings that are attaching me to that other person just being cut away like strands of hair. I don't need other people to like me to like myself. And I mean, I love my short hair. I recently just like trimmed it, and I remember like when I was giving my 4-year-old a bath, and I, you know, said aloud, I'm a lesbian. And, you know, my 4-year-old just like being like, okay. And it just felt so good to like come out as a lesbian. The first person I came out to as a lesbian was my kid, was my 4-year-old. And my experience of living started to feel different. I started to really like see my dog like eat their food. I started to enjoy things around me. I started to enjoy what was in my life in a way that was really visceral. I started to be present, like, because I wasn't numbing anymore. And there's this actress who recently came out, and I forget her name, but she said something when she came out. She's like, it feels so good. She said, I can feel my toes in my shoes. And I love that she said that, because I think about that a lot. Like, I can feel my toes in my shoes. I am in my body, and it is so nice. It is so nice to realize you are not excluded from these things you always heard about other people experiencing. It is so nice to realize that you too can feel happy to be alive. And the stand-up got even better because I was able to be even more myself. Like, my energy was different on stage. I was like no longer prying myself open to be the real version of myself for 4 or 5 minutes. I was coming in as that version of myself.
Yeah, guys, I think I might be gay. Like all the way gay. People get very upset if you say you're a lesbian if you haven't actually slept with a woman. And I'm like, straight people do it, and they're like, well, and I'm like, no, I can be a Christian boy lesbian if I want. People are like, be careful, like, don't make being a lesbian your whole personality. And I'm like, I will not be careful. I'm like, it feels so good to have girls call me hot, not pretty. It feels so good when a femme goth lesbian clocks me at Trader Joe's and does this. And I'm like, I'm so glad I cut my hair. Fuck femininity.
And I like really enjoy stand-up. And I've always like, loved that I did stand-up, but to actually enjoy the experience of being up there is so cool. And that was always my goal, was to like, I wanted to do stand-up from a place of self-energy. I don't know if you're familiar with like internal family systems therapy, but that was the therapy that really helped me connect to this really depressed part that ended up being this like creative, gay, authentic part of me that was really stifled and needed a lot of nourishment and love. But yeah, in IFS, internal family systems therapy, it's like you don't just have an inner child, you have all these inner children. And when you're able to love all the parts of yourself, you're in this state that is just so like loving and connected and open, and all these like adjectives that start with C, like courageous, creative, compassionate, calm, confident, connected. I'm probably forgetting one. And now I like feel that way on stage, and then doing that on stage, being that version of myself on stage, just is such a boost and such a high that, it gets me through the tedious parts of the week or the challenging moments. And I still just love stand-up. I just still love the shit out of stand-up. I love doing it. I'm doing a 15-minute set this week at a Pride show, my first Pride show, and I'm so excited to do stand-up for a bunch of gays. And I wrote this stand-up bit that I probably won't do on stage, but me saying that kind of almost guarantees that at some point I will say it on stage. But I was just feeling really reflective and emotional and nostalgic coming up on the anniversary of me realizing I was queer. I started daydreaming about me saying this thing on stage while doing stand-up, and it goes something like, I'm gonna break the rules of stand-up, I'm gonna say something sincere, and it's okay if it makes you uncomfortable because I get off on that.
2 days from now, exactly a year ago, I realized I was queer. Oh my God, don't fucking cry. Just tell the fucking joke. I'm just kidding. I actually love it when I cry in front of people. Like, get uncomfortable. I get off on it if I don't love it.
And it makes me laugh because it's true. I do love and like just really guilty pleasure kind of satisfaction. Get off on making people uncomfortable with my authenticity and my doing something they've never seen, because that's how honest I'm being. Like, that's who I am. Every time I do stage and tell a joke, about myself that lands, it's like just getting to be seen as who I really am in this like super validating, exciting way, and it's healing. It's an aggressive way to heal, but it's healing. And I like intensity. I am a high sensation seeker. I'm an aggressive person, and that's okay. And I want to let myself be as like assertive and aggressive and just confident, just unapologetic as like men get to be, or as people who are assigned male at birth like are socialized to be. And on the flip side, I hope those people know that they don't have to be like assertive and aggressive if that doesn't feel like who they really are, that they can be soft and just the opposite of what they've always thought they had to be loved. If there's one thing I could tell you, it's that I promise you, if you come out for who you really are, if you follow the ache and find out who you really are, your worst fear of no one loving you, no one loving that version of yourself, I promise you it will not come true. Because people love authenticity. They love it, and it inspires them, and it's this beautiful thing. And you'll find the people who love it because they will find you. It's fun to post this because I started vlogging 10 years ago, maybe a little over 10 years ago. And my very first video was called How I Stopped Dating and Started Writing. And now I'm gonna celebrate that 10-year anniversary by posting a video called How I Came Out as Gay While Doing Stand-Up. Or maybe just watch me come out as gay while doing stand-up. Because that's what I did. I just watched myself show me who I really was. And I just like got out of the way and stopped suppressing it. Stopped suppressing the desire to do stand-up. I let it drive, and I'm grateful. Like, I'm really, really grateful that I get to be this version of myself, that I get to start a new life as this version of myself. I love that Taylor Swift song and the line where she's like, I cry a lot, but I am so productive. It's an art, because like that is my experience. But I've just gotten so beautiful and seamless about crying throughout my day when I need, because like I feel so much. And I mean, like, for those of you who followed me on YouTube, like, I've cried a lot before. I was emotional and all about that crying before, and now it's just like, I mean, I feel even more. I feel moved. I am a highly sensitive person. On hard days, I try to remind myself that like there are so many more good things to come because I did all this brave work of loving myself, of choosing myself again and again. And I'm really grateful to my kiddo, because I don't know that I would have come out had I not become a mom, because it suddenly became so important to me to set an example, you know, choosing my own happiness. Because what I would wish more than anything for my kid is that when they're grown, that they have the confidence and the resources and the self-love to choose themselves, even when other people are like, don't do that, I don't want you to do that. And they're like, well, that's, you're free to express that, but I need to love who I am, because I know that's the only way. That's the only way to be happy. That's the only way to love this experience of living here. And it's a great experience. It's amazing to be alive. And we shouldn't waste it trying to be someone we are not. And Dolly Parton has this quote that's like on a poster in my bedroom that says, find out who you are and do it on purpose. And I love that, because I think I'm really doing that now more than ever, and it feels really good. And one of the things I'm most hopeful about moving forward is just like the art I'll get to make. I'm looking forward to just like what's to come, even though I don't know what that is. But I know whatever it is, I'll get to experience it as this real and authentic version of me that is just so easy to be and feels so good. I mean, on those like, you know, days when I have good days, it's just like, it feels so good. And I look forward to having just more and more of those as I keep creating this foundation for a new, you know, life and finding ways to support myself. But yeah, I love you guys, and my wish for you is that you get to experience falling in love with yourself more than you ever, you know, thought you were allowed to, and getting that safety within yourself, because you deserve it. You really deserve it. And I guess the very last thing I'd want to say is that, like, you know, on those nights or days where you're having a really hard time, to just please remember that there is nothing about you that needs to be fixed. Because you were never broken. You just weren't. You were never broken. So stop trying to fix yourself, and get support and people who will help you learn to love all those parts of you that make you unique, not broken. I think I saw a meme on Instagram that was like, you are not a problem to be fixed, you are a miracle to be explored. I love that. I'll probably make more YouTube videos. So if you'd like to follow, subscribe, like this video, all of that little digital love means a lot to me. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I post the most. My queer journey is kind of all documented there, becoming more and more, open and direct about me being queer. I'll end this video the way I end my stand-up sets and say, that's my set. You go, what do I say? That's my time. You all have been beautiful. I've been Linda Barcy. Have a good night.
I think I figured it out. Jesus was just a guy who was like, no, we need more love and less, what is this? Meanness towards the lepers? They're just doing their best. And I was like,
wow, I love how much we are talking about Jesus. I am also going to talk about Jesus. Specifically, can we talk about how sexy Jesus is? I think he's so hot. I will always think he's so hot. Which is funny because I did recently realize I'm a lesbian. Okay, wait, how gay are we as an audience? Okay. I'll define terms as we go. Let's hear, how gay are we in here? Are we pretty straight audience? I'm not going to change my set. I just want to level expectations for myself. I recently realized I'm a lesbian. That's my whole thing.
But after that, I was like, you know what? No more stupid questions, no more filler questions, direct questions only. How gay are we as an audience? Nice. Just Alex, who I carpool to with. Awesome. My name is Linda, and I recently realized I'm a lesbian, and that's my whole thing.
How gay are we as an audience? Yes, I was hoping. I had my eyes on you. Anyway. Yes. Just do it, the whole thing. Okay. No more stupid questions, no more filler questions, direct questions only. How gay are we as an audience? Nice. It's okay. I love straight people. I was straight. And then I... You go on one girl's trip to Nashville. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. It really happened in Nashville. Holy shit. Okay, something I've noticed is that, well, you guys are bored. Are you here because you're going to do stand-up soon? Oh. Why are you here? Oh, good. Do you like my lesbian content? Okay, I'm sweet. Okay, I'll check back in. I like feedback from straight men. It's so fun.